All right, my friends, let's take a look at part A here. So just to make sure, this a sub n, really you could think of it as kind of a function of n, and some people use that notation. They would call it like a of n. I think in Algebra 1, when I teach this, I just go ahead and use that function notation. You'll notice, though, that for our purposes, using this little subscript notation, makes a lot more sense. It's a lot more compact, etc. So let's just go ahead and practice using that instead of switching over. But in general, it's just like function notation. So a sub n means the nth term. So if you want the first term, then you let n be 1. So a sub 1, and then you just follow your substitution nose here. Oh, by the way, previously I said 1, but I totally meant 10 here for this term here. Anyway, so you'd have 4 times 1 minus 10. So your first term would simply be negative 6. A sub 2, you just do 4 times 2 minus 10, just plugging the new n value in. You'd get negative 2. A sub 3 would be 4 times 3 minus 10, which would be positive 2. A sub 4 times 4 minus 10 equals, what would that be, 6? And it says they want the first 4 terms, so I've got the first 4 terms. There you go. Now, to list the terms, truly, we've given the answer, but you'll notice that we have a tendency to list the terms kind of in a horizontal list here. So the first term was negative 6, the second, negative 2, the third, 2, the fourth, 6. And then we'd say comma, dot, 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 to show that it would continue in that manner pretty much forever, unless you say it has to stop somewhere. So anyway, there you go. So that would be the first sequence, at least the first 4 terms. We could always generate more terms if we were asked. So there you go. Let's see, for part B, same thing. B sub 1 would be negative 1 to the first over 1 squared. Which would end up being, what would that be, negative 1. B sub 2 equaling negative 1 squared over 2 squared would end up being positive 1/4. B sub 3. Let's see, whoops, wrong thing. Got those backwards, didn't I? Boop. 3 squared, which would be negative 1/9. B sub 4. Boop. Would be 1/16. There we go. And they just asked for the first 4 terms. So typically it only takes 3 terms to establish a pattern, unless you have something that's pretty complex. So by the time you can see 3 terms, most of the time we can kind of like figure out what the trick is. But 4 terms is just a little extra. So okay, so the first term would have been negative 1, then positive 1/4, then negative 1/9, and then positive 1/16. There we go. And that would be the beginning of that infinite sequence. So there you go. Hopefully you feel like you're comfortable with this subscript notation. You know that n is just the number of term you're on. And then if you know what term you need, you just put the right thing in there. There you go. Also, one thing to put in your back pocket, notice the effect that this negative 1 to the nth power had on your results. So I hope it makes sense that negative 1 to the nth power in the rule is what made the signs alternate, negative, positive, etc. You might want to put that in your back pocket because in future, they'll ask you to write the rule if they give you the list of the terms. And so it's kind of nice to know that that's how you make the signs alternate, or that's a way to do that. All right, my friends, now let's talk about what happens when the numbers yell at you. Let's talk about factorial. You may have seen factorial in the past. It looks like an exclamation point for the symbol. So let's just give you an example. Let's say I give you 4 factorial. Well, what 4 factorial means is that you're supposed to multiply certain factors together. Your base of your factorial, in this case of 4, would be the first number that would be a factor. The next factor would be that number, take away 1, and so 3. The next number would be that, take away 1, and then you go until you get to 1, and then you stop. Let's see, what would 4 factorial be? What is that? 24? There you go. And, if you've never done this with your calculator, it would be kind of fun for you to see if you can find how to do factorial on your calculator and just kind of verify that 4 factorial is 24 according to your calculator as well. Let's talk about the definition of factorial, kind of like not just an example. So the definition of a number factorial is equal to, so what would the first factor be for just any number factorial? So yeah, it would be that number. And then what would the next factor be? Yeah, it would be that number take away 1. The next factor would be this number take away 1, also known as your first number take away 2. And then you'd continue in that manner. A way to say you keep multiplying like that is, you know how the multiplication dot is like, halfway vertically, halfway through from the top line to the bottom line. So you just say, keep multiplying until you get down to 3, 2, 1. And I hope it makes sense. You always stop at 1, right? Because what would have happened right after 1 if you just kept subtracting? Yeah, 0. So if you don't want the answer to always be 0, then you better stop at 1. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's see. So then let's do a quick little example. So what if I asked you, what's 3 factorial or 2 factorial, 1 factorial, and then this one's kind of fun, 0 factorial. Anyway, so think about those. You're welcome to pause the video if you want to do it on your own, and then just check with me. But 3 factorial would equal 3 times 2 times 1, which would just be 6. 2 factorial would be 2 times 1, which would be 2. 1 factorial would be just 1. And by definition, 0 factorial is 1. So I'm just going to put a note there. By definition. Also known as because we said so, or because we needed it to be that way. And math breaks if we don't have 0 factorial equal 1. Anyway, so there you go. All right, my friends, let's have you see about example 2, checking to see how well you're understanding the 2 concepts that we've talked about so far. Find the indicated term of each sequence. For part A, the nth term is defined as -1 to the nth power times the quantity 3n minus 2. And they want to know what the 25th term would be. And for part B, the nth term is defined as n factorial over 2 times n. And they want to know what the 6th term would be, given that definition. See how it goes. Check in with me in the next video.